voice of FinTech.
Hello and welcome to Voice of FinTech Africa series. I'm Rudy Fala, the founder of Voice of FinTech podcast. In this series, you will hear inspirational stories of entrepreneurs, investors, incumbents, and ecosystem hub leaders from Africa. And this episode is hosted by Adejoke.
Hi everyone, this is the Voice of FinTech Africa series. I am Adejoke Adekunle and you're welcome to another exciting episode. With me today is Olusola Owoyemi, the CEO of Infibranches, a company founded in 2019 to solve an important problem in Africa. Infibranches is tackling the lack of financial access for underserved businesses, individuals, and communities. Infibranches also provides access to basic utilities like electricity, water, insurance, and other essential services such as mobile and internet. On this episode, Shola and I discuss what it takes to solve Africa's last mile problems and how enabling access to finance enables access to everything else in Africa. Thank you for joining me, Shola. I have been looking forward to our conversation and I am glad we're finally here.
Thank you for having me, Adejoke. So the pleasure is all mine. I'm also looking forward to this. I'm excited about what we're discussing about.
Great. So let me start by asking this. For the benefit of our listeners, can you give me a bit of background on what Infibranches does and the origin story of this company?
Okay, thanks for the question. It's actually a product and technology company. And we use this to actually solve the problem of distribution and access across the consumer economy in terms of taking solutions from the service providers who are in any location across the country, across the world, or to the last mile consumer who might be in a remote location that doesn't have access to or services they are offering. Due to its location or probably a distribution or weakness on the part of the service provider. And just to give you a little background about the origin of the company. So we started by providing support and deployment/development activities for enterprise platforms on mobile money across Africa. So we were able to work with about 17 countries, deploying mobile money along with the telcos, the likes of MTN, Vodafone, Tigo. And so we took all these years of experience with us to actually build a platform that solves the problem and fills the gap of distribution and payment collection across this entire value chain.
Interesting. You clearly see an opportunity, and that brings me to this question, which is, it's not clear why underserved communities have remained underserved or unserved for the longest time. The common assumption people have is people within these communities have low spending power or low economic activities. And it makes it very unattractive to build a business around consumers in these communities. So I'm curious, right? Infibranches seems to have a different view on that. And I'd love for you to expand on your thesis about why you're focused on these communities. So what is it we aren't seeing on the outside?
It's actually a very, very unique problem that we're trying to solve here. So one of the very distinctive challenges of the people at the base of the pyramid is the logistics in terms of from the service providers leg, in terms of how can they reach these low income customers. So for instance, when the product is a solar home system or a health clinic or a banking services, the fact that they cannot be everywhere and the cost of transporting or distributing their products across all of these locations, they try to eliminate that cost so that it doesn't impact on their overall margin. And in addition to that, since most people believe that these low-income people don't have capacity to pay, so then why waste their time talking to them, or why waste their time or trying to sell their services to them? But from our end, so we are seeing it from a different light. So one of the key things for us is to just run you through some figures. As of today in Nigeria, over 95% of the land mass is actually made up of rural areas, and this contributes to less than 20% of the GDP. And in terms of the population, over 66% of the entire adult population come from these rural areas. So it simply means we are excluding the adult population who actually have the buying power to pay for services from the entire payment system or whatever service the service provider is providing. And so for us, we saw this as a very huge opportunity in terms of why don't we bring these people on board, get them included into the financial services, get them included or give them energy access and see what they can do in terms of revenue. And we believe from historical data and things we've done in the last 2 years, we've seen a jump in their revenue and they're also contributing hugely to the macroeconomic value of the country at large.
Interesting. And that's really impressive what you guys are doing. However, I wonder if these businesses, the service providers that you work with, I wonder why up to the point you guys started working with them, it didn't make an economic sense. You've talked about the population that we're looking at and being like 66% of the adult population that have basically been excluded from financial services and access to things like energy. So that should look like an opportunity to any business. But I wonder what service providers up until this point considered in deciding against trying to navigate the hurdles around engaging or providing services to these underserved communities. So have you at any point tried to figure out why these guys aren't doing it? Or it's just the assumption that this is not priority for them, or it's just too tough a business to explore, too tough like a challenge for them to take on, and that's what makes Infibranches relevant?
Okay, so I think there are a few misconceptions around that. So talking about what they believe and what the reality is. The opinion that rural equates to poor, it's no longer sound. It doesn't make sense again. And that's one of the general assumptions for most people. And they always feel, so let me focus on the little people that can actually get me right the value or the quick win that I'm looking at. But if you look at it in the long term, these people in these rural areas are the ones that they have. So from our research, because from a data point of view, we do a lot of market research before we actually venture into any of these activities. And what we've realized is most of these people in these rural areas, they have the will and the capacity to pay for these services. So the major problem for them is these services are not even available to them in the first place. So they are not giving the benefit to even try what they deserve. And one of the key things we've identified or reasons why most companies don't want to go that route is the cost of logistics. So, for instance, a typical bank we look at the cost of setting up physical buildings across probably all the different local governments across the country, in Africa as well. And by the time you look at the cost of setting up these buildings, the cost of running those buildings, cost of doing all of these things, it becomes something to the market size of this population. How does it fit into my overall plan? So because by the time you look at it, won't I be running at a loss providing all of this, keeping the system running? Because the market might not be very, the value the return I get might not equate to the investment I'm making, basically. So, the gap we are now filling is we don't need you to set up all of these services. So, what we've done at Infibranches is we basically aggregate all these different service providers. So, through our own agent network, we can perform these services on your behalf as if you're still the same person perform these services in those areas, and you don't have to worry about the cost of setting up physical buildings. So we take away that headache. And the interesting thing for us is we've made the system so seamless that just with a mobile app or with the USSD, you're able to perform most of the services and render them to the final customer. So for us, it makes the whole conversation more interesting when we start looking at them saying that these people are actually poor. They are not poor. So the only twist to it right now is they might not have the capacity to pay at once. So, but they are willing to probably pay over a period of time. So, because I'll give you a solar case for as an example. The cost of purchasing a typical solar home system might go as high as say 300,000 naira. That's about close to $1,000. And these people, if you look at their total per capita income, may not be able to actually afford that at once. with what we've actually put in place, so they can actually now pay over a period of time, and you still get your return plus interest, because they are not paying the face money over a period of time.
Interesting. And there's something you mentioned that caught my interest, right? You talked about some of the misconceptions or misperceptions about people in the rural communities, that they're not poor. I'm interested to know about some of the other misperceptions people have, right? You also mentioned that people can access some of your services by using the mobile app. And I know that there's a widely held belief that people in the rural communities have low literacy levels. So I'd love for you to speak more on some of the other behaviors that you've seen that counter what people generally perceive the rural people who live in rural communities to be.
Okay, all right, yeah. So I'll just take it from what I said before. So yeah, the poverty level that the assumed poverty level in most cases are not actually. So we've seen people. So when I talk about their will to pay for services, so they might not have the cash at hand to actually give for the services. Well, in most cases, we have these people, they are farmers, they have other produce, other things that they do. We have fishermen, we have a whole lot of different activities that they actually perform that generates revenue for them. So, but the fact that they can't transfer this wealth they have to the cash or our own means of tender, or makes it difficult for people to actually assess and say this is the worth of these people and this is what they can afford. Because if you also look at most of these people in this area, in this region, they are also unbanked. So you don't have a credit history. You don't have anything to justify the fact that they can actually pay for these services or actually afford those services. And all of these things come together to actually form that misconception that they are generally poor. And when we don't have this kind of data in place to actually prove this, then it becomes a problem for people that want to offer services to actually consider them at all. What we've done is to actually try to evaluate all of these things and see. So, for instance, a typical farmer has a lot of products to sell. They don't know how to convert this. And you also look at it from a different perspective. They also get to lose most of their products as well and preserve them. They don't have access to financial services to actually probably get a loan to expand the business or build a structure around it. And all of this impacts on their general wealth assessment. So with a little experience at Infibranches, one of the very key things, one of our key focus of vertical is the renewable energy space. And we've actually learned a lot in the last few years about how we can transform some of these things and make these people more marketable, more attractive to service providers. And one of the things we've done is create access. That's basically what access to all of these key things that can help us translate their worth into what people who want to offer services to them can actually use. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. A typical tomato seller at the end of the year or at the end of the day loses more than 60% of their harvest because you don't have a good way to preserve it. And so same applies to the fishermen as well. What we have today, we have solar powering the refrigerators. We have solar powering the communities where they can actually preserve some of these products and get them to revenue and also drive up their buying power as well. And I think that's the angle we should all be looking at it from, so that we can actually get these people more included into the financial sector.
So what you're saying is beyond financial inclusion, you're also helping these people create wealth, right? By helping them untrap basically all forms of value. Yeah, so I don't imagine that this is hassle-free for you guys, right? I imagine that to have to do this, you are navigating God knows what. There's the logistics bit, which is a big problem in itself. There's the low awareness level, I think, there as well, where you need to sensitize people on the importance of what it is you're doing within these communities. There's I don't know if you have regulatory issues as well, but I'd like for you to talk about some of the critical challenges that you're experiencing in running a company like Infibranches.
Okay, yeah, thanks. All right, so in running a company like Infibranches, I think you've touched on some of the points. So the awareness level for our target market is very low. So most of these people don't even understand what financial services mean. They don't have that financial literacy, so they don't even understand how this works. And so one of the first things to do is to create a training or slash awareness avenue for them. What we've been able to do is partner with key stakeholders across different sectors. So working with an REA for the renewable energy space, IFC, that's that's the
Finance
financial
corporation,
person.
yeah.
Fin- Yes. So, and all of these people will work with all of them to actually see how we can drive this market awareness. Early last year slash this 2019, before the COVID-19 peaked in Nigeria, we were actually able to do some market storm, market awareness in some of these key rural areas, about 17 states across the country. And the return we got within that period was very massive, because we're able to see a lot of interest, a lot of people trying to create. The wow moment was very, very interesting for us. I said, also, I could do this, so I could do this. So these are the benefits, and it speaks a lot to how why they actually excluded, because there's no awareness for them. And so another thing is the cost of logistics, which most of these service providers are not willing to take. And the fact that they can't, so the distribution channels are missing basically, because there's no logistics, there's no distribution channel. So definitely they just leave these people unserved because of those costs they don't want to incur. And yeah, level of KYC requirement that needs to be done before you can get these people onboarded. There's a level of literacy level that you need for people to be able to actually perform some of the services on their own, because they can't always come to the bank or come to all these people at every point in time. So all of these things come together as different challenges. And the key thing for us is also need to build trust with the customers, because if we cannot build trust with the customers, there's no way they can trust you with their value or with their money, or believe that you can actually provide this service you're claiming you want to or to provide. And if the reality of it is, for this kind of segment you're targeting, these people, they cannot afford to make poor choices with their limited income. So they must always get it right at every point in time when you're trying to probably take a decision around the service they're paying for. And then this is why it's also key for us to drive the business value for them, that so they can see the unique value we're actually proposing before they commit into adopting a service or paying for a financial service.
Interesting. You've alluded to some of it, but I'd like to know what you consider as some of the most important success factors in servicing consumers in last mile communities.
Okay, talking about success factors, I think first thing first, you have to make sure your product is right for your customers. So the product fit has to be there. So, like I said, we've learned a lot in 2 years since incorporation, and their products we've taken to a particular market and realized that the same way we took them there was the same way we had to retrieve them back to our offices, because this is not what they need. If you two you don't have that kind of a work or make those kind of mistakes, always ensure the product you're putting out there is very right for the customer. So that product fit is very key. So for you to drive success around whatever you're putting out there, then I'm out on distribution. It's very key to anything that needs to be done, because if you don't have the right channels to actually get these products across to the people that needs them, then you're not ready for business. And that's one of the things that we've been able to focus our energy on and get right. So make logistics more efficient. And for the agents that actually perform the service on our behalf, we see them as part of our sales team, as part of our team, basically. So we call them partners. And what one of the key things they do for us is the airport drive the sale. So they sell this product as if they belong to whoever company they are performing the service on for. So if I'm paying for a DSTV, the same kind of level of customer service I receive from a DSTV staff is what we expect from them as well. So those are some of the things we've been able to do. And in addition to that, market awareness is energy awareness. Try to get these people to understand the benefits of coming into the system and enjoying what they've been missing. over the years. Then a key strategy for us is partnership. We have today we have over 100 service providers on our platform. We have partnered with more than 17 banks. Working with the likes of REA, that's the Renewable Energy Association, Rural Education Agency rather. So we're also part of the REA, that's the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria.
Okay.
Then we are working with NOMAP. So we are working with a couple of key players in all the different sectors. So we identify the key stakeholders and we're talking to each of them so that we can actually ensure that we're driving the right information and the right value across to those people that needs to be there. And for us, we're a technology company. So but the tweak to it is we have to use the technology wisely. So we are not just putting all of these things in the faces of people that don't even understand what technology is or how to use it. And to make agents happy, so the profit story has to be very unique and interesting for them before they can even take up the service on behalf of the service provider. So as part, even though we are giving them the technology and the platform to provide the service to people in the last mile, we also need to ensure that they are making money and they are getting the right. So we negotiate on their behalf. And we also ensure that whatever we're negotiating is coming from them, because we are just like interfacing on their behalf with the service provider, and they are interfacing on behalf of the service provider with the customers. So it's a win-win for both parties, and we always have to make the right decisions for that. And I think the last thing is going to be the metrics. That's talking about numbers. So always count the right numbers to ensure that you're getting the right value in terms of the return on investment, the right value in terms of impact, the right value in terms of the happiness of giving to people who have actually they've lost their dreams basically because.
So just to recap, I will take it from the end. First is to make sure that you're tracking the right numbers. Secondly is to give the right reward for work done. That's by negotiating on behalf of your agent partners. Third is the right technology or using technology wisely, right? Making sure that the people you are applying this technology for understand to some degree how it works. Partnerships is also very critical for the different service providers that you work with, and even talking to key stakeholders within each sector that you're focused on, you make sure to find the right partners. And then you also mentioned market awareness, right? Helping people understand the value that you're bringing to these different communities. You also mentioned a bit about product fits in that, of course, you have to give people what they want anyways. And then the big one, which is distribution. You have to get it right if you want to scale up to, as many communities as possible. Those are very great points. And I think this is a good opportunity to segue into the conversation about Infibranches, right? Infibranches is your flagship product at Infibranches. I'd like for you to talk about what Infibranches does or what value Infibranches offers.
Okay, thank you. So Infibranches is a product itself that actually drives all these transactions. So Infibranches is an agent management platform where we actually aggregate all the different service providers. On Infibranches, we aggregate all the different agents. On Infibranches as well, we also try to give visibility and transparency to everybody that's a key actor on that platform. So basically, Infibranches drives the entire transaction from the agent point of view to the service provider and back to the customer getting value. And what we've been able to do with Infibranches is, so today we have a mobile platform which all our agents use to actually perform all the activities. And the beauty of it is they see all their transactions real time. So they are initiating it via USSD. So with that single view, they can actually see all their transactions that is happening in real time. And interestingly, they also get instant value in terms of commissions, reconciliation, settlement. All of these are already taken care of seamlessly end to end. We've tried as much as possible to remove all the human interventions across that value chain, such that you can run the entire system end to end without having to call someone or call the service provider to probably credit or activate an account. Or if you do a DSTV today, as you clicking on send, once you get a success response, instantly the person gets the value. For renewable energy, or the people we have partnered with, if you pay for a solar device, probably we do So for the solar device bit, so there are two sides to it. So there's the people that wants to pay outright. That means they want to buy the entire product, they have that capacity. And we also have people that want to pay on like a lease to own model. That's what we call a pay go model. So they pay as you go so that they can cover that total cost over a period of time. So for every month or every day they pay, they get value for just that period. So if they don't continue with the payments, that means they don't get to sell that value. So and that's a key problem we'll be able to solve for those in the renewable energy space. So where the typical customer buys a product, pays for the first month, because there's no way to make the subsequent payment, he abandons the entire system. So for them, they lose money because they have to probably after 60 days or 3 months, they have to go and retrieve. At the point where they are going to retrieve, the customer is telling them, I'm willing to pay, but I didn't have a channel to make payments. Then they lose 3 months of revenue. So, but now we fill that gap. So all the customer just needs to do is walk up to a typical branches agent or pay that value, and we just communicate via our existing technology with the service provider and activate that device instantly.
Nice.
So the customer just keeps enjoying the benefits continuously without any disruption. And over the short period of time, so Infibranches has been able to process over 5 million transactions, and we've processed over 50 billion naira in value. Like I mentioned earlier, we have over 100 service providers. As of today, we are connected to about 21 of the key solar home providers and mini grids in Nigeria. And some of these people also have presence outside of Africa, outside of Nigeria as well. And one interesting thing we've done with Infibranches is now we've added a layer to it whereby we call it a single point of integration. And what that does for us is we are not just limited to what we can offer through our agents. We are able to extend our services to other payment channels or payment providers, or even also called competitors in the financial services space. So, for instance, we are the only ones that currently have the aggregation of all the as of today. And through our agents, we don't want to just sell it through our agents alone. We want to be able to sell it through any channel. So we created a single point of integration whereby all the different that we give to them, and they're able to perform the service on behalf of the same service with all the 21 service providers. And the icing on the cake is now the service providers don't need to run different probably integrations with each of the different payment providers that you have across the country. We've taken care of that headache. They don't need to sign different agreements with each of them, which can take years. And for every new integration we do, either on the part of the service provider or on the part of the payment channel, both parties get access to each other. So that means there's always growth across your opportunity. So 100 million customers across Nigeria that needs to see this. Yeah.
This is all of this is very impressive. I can't, imagine the impact that you guys have realized in providing energy access to these communities. I'd like for you to unpack the intersection between a fintech company or between fintech generally and energy access from an Africa perspective.
Okay, so I would like to take that from the CBN's quote. So CBN, I think that was early last year, early 2020. They released a publication and they stated that the pathways to energy access, financial inclusion, and poverty reduction are closely linked. And it requires a proper payment channel to actually address this. So just to give more context to that, the audience that you're targeting, you're providing a financial service or financial inclusion service, is the same set of people that don't have access to power. A typical Africa, let me use Africa as a case study. So across Africa, you have about 800 million people that do not have access to financial services, and about 600 million people that do not have access to electricity as well. And 2 out of 3 people in sub-Saharan Africa are excluded from both electricity and financial services. So there's a huge overlap in this customer segment. So if you're able to actually solve a problem that with financial access, then you can't do that in isolation without also giving these people access to energy, because both of them go together as one. And I think, like I mentioned, for you to reduce poverty as well, you need to provide these two, the financial access and energy access. So all of these are closely related. So that intersection is very obvious for us to see in Infibranches. And so, for instance, a typical customer that wants to make a payment for, let's say, a cable subscription, but does not have access to it, how you lose that customer because the person doesn't have energy access. So they won't pay for your service. So, and they won't get value, and you lose out on that particular customer. Same thing applies to a customer that wants to probably get a loan and reach more customers with what they're doing. But it becomes pointless if this same barber doesn't have access to power that you use to actually power, let's say, the clipper for the service. So it becomes a problem. So they don't need that loan because there's no way they can even utilize or expand their business with that loan because they don't have access to power. And so another way to also look at this is when you're probably due to the high costs. Okay, so all of this comes together to actually I like the point I'm trying to make around that intersection. It's very key for you to actually solve all of this problem together. So at Infibranches, we are filling this gap by always ensuring that we are able to initiate payment recollection for the energy providers at this location. And for a typical market that probably sells from 9 to 6 p.m., now they can come out earlier than 9 because they have access to solar power. And they can also close later than 6 p.m. when it's very dark because they have access to some electricity that can use to power their service. So, and this translates to more revenue for them. And so they become more creditworthy because you can see their traction. Well, it takes me back to that misconception that if you don't empower these people with the financial access and the energy access that they need, they will remain poor.
Interesting. Let's discuss big picture for Infibranches, really. I'd like to know what your 2021 goals are and where you are today.
Okay, so for us, we're hoping to expand our agent network. As of today, we have, excuse me, as of today, we have about 20,000 agents across the country, spread across the entire country. And we already, like I mentioned earlier, we're already processing over 50 billion in transactions with all the different connections we've done to the solar home systems and mini grids with 17 banks working relationship. And so we're looking to take that a bit higher. So we're hoping to be able to expand this to about 40 to 50,000 agents during the course of the year. And at the same time, in doing this, we'll also be actually creating more jobs for people. In the next 3 to 4 years, we're hoping to take this number to about 200,000 plus agents that will actually be focused on collecting payments and actually enabling distribution and collection on behalf of service providers. So that's translates to over 200,000 plus jobs. And we are hoping over 200 geographically distributed. And we also believe that we should be able to power about 10 million of the urban population in the next 5 years. These are some of the key things we are looking at and be able to connect Africa to the rest of the world.
And what's one thing you're most proud of since you started running Infibranches?
Okay, one of the things we are very proud of is our footprint in the renewable energy sector. So the impact we've been able to drive within the short period of time, being able to actually solve the payment problem across that value chain is something that we're very proud of, and we are hoping to take that to. We're strategically positioned to do this. We're working tirelessly to ensure that we're able to take this further. We're already the leader in this sector, and we plan to remain the leader in that. And the second one is the single point of integration that I mentioned earlier. So a typical Infibranches has just about 20,000 agents, and if you look at the entire agents networks in terms of agents across Nigeria, we are close to 500,000. So we're able to layer with just single API. That means we can actually power the entire 500,000 agents to actually provide renewable energy services and create this access and distribution to everybody across the country within a very short period of time. So these are very key milestones that we've been able to achieve. And I also like to touch on the strategic partnerships as well. I think we've not been able to do this on our own. So those are some of the key things that have actually been instrumental to all the achievements we've been able to make.
Right. So can you just talk a bit more about the strategic partnerships? What are the things you're looking at specifically? What kinds of partners do you consider ideal to work with you in realizing some of these ambitions?
Okay, so talking about partners, so we're looking at partners that have the same that we have the same goal in terms of strategy. At the same time, we have the same passion to empower people within this underserved and rural communities, so to say. At the same time, we're also looking at working with typical investors who are also interested in solving the same problem we're trying to solve across the payment and distribution of services across the world, basically. Today, we're working with telcos, we're working with banks, we're working with insurance companies, we're working with cable providers, we're working with key players in the renewable energy space, mini grids. We also have work relationship with edge sectors as well, and we do revenue collection for the government as well. So these are key players. So, and like I mentioned when I started, we don't discriminate in terms of who the service provider is. So we are willing to partner with everybody as long as we're able to understand the value they're trying to provide, see that it aligns with what we're trying to do. We can use technology and people to actually help them scale and distribute this across different locations where they are not presently.
And for anybody listening to this podcast, if the person is perhaps interested in reaching out to you, how do people contact you?
Okay, so I think I'm very visible on LinkedIn. So that's with the name Olusola Owoyemi. At the same time, so you can always shoot me an email at shola@infibranches.com. So Shola, SOLA, yes, SOLA at infibranches.com. So Infi is INFIBRANCHES @.com.
Copy that. Okay. And do you have any parting comments you'd like to share with our listeners?
Okay, so for me, I think beyond Africa or being able to connect Africa to the rest of the world, we strongly believe that the payment market is actually very big, over $760 billion market, and with over about 50% annual growth. And Africa has a very useful population that makes up about 60% of its number today. And the majority of the services that exist today are either card focused or targeted at people that are not in these locations and we are actually focused on. And with this, we believe we cannot leave 70% of the market underserved or unserved, because they also need to actually enjoy the same value that the 30% are getting. So for us, we've made making payments for all the services as easy as ordering a cup of coffee. And we believe with Infibranches, and go from being frustrated to enjoying the value that they desire. We cannot also afford a billion of the world's youngest population to stay without access to all of these economic opportunities that they can drive. It's risky for the world at large. And we are committed to improving lives and connecting more Africans to the global economy through the world-class infrastructure that we've built so that the world can be safe. And we will keep taking energy and financial access to the last mile.
Gosh, I love the sound of that. Thank you so much for joining this conversation, Shola. It's been a truly exciting time chatting with you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Adejoke. And you too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Voice of FinTech podcast. If you haven't already, check out also voiceoffintech.com, where you will find all the episodes and additional resources related to the podcast. You can also subscribe to Voice of FinTech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or any other podcast app that you like. If you have any suggestions on the topics or guests, or how to make this podcast better for you, please email us at info@voiceoffintech.com. Happy to hear from you. Thank you.